Hey guys, what's going on? Welcome back to the channel, and today I wanted to talk a little bit about how I color grade, but more specifically how I keep organized and the color grade consistent throughout an entire set. First things first, I like to come into Lightroom with my file dump basically and go through and flag all the images. You see these little flags here. You could just click at the top of the box there and you'll get a little flag when you're looking at the images. If I come to unflagged, you'll see filters off. You see the little flag there. So when you know you want to work with that image, you just hit the flag and then you can come into the flagged images and work. So what I like to do here, and I'll reset this, is I generally shoot on a manual white balance. I shoot right in the middle of the temperature between 3000 and 10,000. I'll put it right around 5,000, and that'll kind of give me this blank slate to work with. I typically do that for most of the shoots unless I know the real direction I want to move in. Sometimes it's hard to know the direction you want to move in though until you see the whole series of the images and the mood of the images that you get. So now I'll come in here and I'll start pushing. I wanted this a little bit warmer, so let's just do a really quick edit to try to get back to where we were. Bear with me. And I'll do some really light tweaks, just getting it ready for Photoshop. And let's just say I know that I wanted to put a warmer tone in the highlights, so I'll go in with something. Actually, we'll just leave it like this just for the sake of the video. So now I will go to edit in Photoshop. Okay, so once the image is in Photoshop, I'll do all my normal tweaks. I'll fix reflections in the car that I don't like. I will brighten the wheels. I'll retain my sky. A bunch of the normal edits, but today I'm just going to show you guys what I like the best with color grading. You can do it a ton of different ways. You can color grade in levels, you can color grade in curves, you can do a little bit in selective colors, but lately I've been liking the color balance, which seems pretty basic, but you can get actually pretty in depth with it. So if I went into my shadows and I said I want to push, you know, reds and warms in my shadows, something like that. Let's dial the green back a little bit. What you can do is you can come up to image and then apply image, and you'll see once you get this dialog box here, it should look like this: merge, RGB, multiply 100, preview on. But you'll notice your layer mask goes from just a white layer mask that's affecting your entire photo to, when you preview what this apply image does, it's only affecting my highlights and brightest midtones now. So now I wanted that to be on my shadows, so I'm going to invert it, and now it's only affecting my shadows, it's not affecting my highlights. So that's the latest way that I like to kind of color grade. Now you can go furthermore and you can hit Control L on it, and you'll see when I slide the levels, you're going to see the layer mask take away things. So if I come down, you'll see it get darker and darker, and now it will really only be affecting my darkest points. You could see how things are just, the floor is kind of turning dark too now, and that's eliminating some of the layer mask basically for me. So now you can see we got a nice warm tones. There was a blue hue in the darks, but now it's getting warm. And then I would come back and I'd do that for highlights as well. I'll do it for midtones sometimes too, or sometimes I'll do, instead of shadows, I'll do the midtones. It depends on how dark the photo is, how bright the photo is, how much you want it to affect, but midtones is going to kind of affect both of them a little bit. So I'll generally do my shadows and highlights, see how that looks, and then I'll start playing with the midtones very lightly. So then I'll come into highlights. Let's just say, I think for this I push like a slight cyan, green, and blue in the highlights, something like that. Apply image. In there, let's just say we wanted to roll with that, and you can, I'm editing very softly here, but you can still come back in here, even though they're done now, you could still come back in here and say, hey, you know what, I want it to be more purple, I want it to be green, I want it to be cyan, you know, and really tweak the color grade. But we won't do that. Another thing you can do is, you know, say you wanted it to be warmer, but you can, instead of coming in here and trying to get the exact color right, say you like the color, you can just take your opacity and you can fluctuate the opacity. Another thing to do if you want to kill the luminance, the luminosity in it, is come and just make it a color blend mode. Now it won't really affect your dark point. Basically, it'll literally just be touching color, but depending on, it's kind of depending on the shoot that you're working on. Sometimes it looks better with color. Sometimes, you know, you want the color to have a little contrast punch or something. So it's kind of preference. But that's how I like to edit here. Then I'll just file, save as, and I'll make sure that the PSD goes in the root folder of the Lightroom file, the same RAW. So basically, if you open up that folder, you'll see the RAW and then the PSD directly next to it. And what that does is, let me just close this out. That will bring it back and put it right next to, you see how I got all the, if I hover over this, it says, you know, NEF, it's my RAW file, and then right next to it is my PSD. So the PSD should come right back here in your collection that you made, and now you can see the difference of the two images. Now obviously we've tweaked this one for the video, so it's very far off, but basically when you come back into Lightroom, I'll make subtle tweaks. You know, I wanted more golden in the highlights, in the brightest highlights, so you can see over here on my color grade tab that I put a little bit of orange and yellow in. I made a couple of highlights and shadow tweaks and some clarity to give it a little bit more punch. But now specifically, this is my lead photo, right? So after I got to this point on the image, now this is my photo where when I edit this one in Photoshop and get it here, when it gets to this point, now I'm going to control click, come into library, and come into the survey mode down here, survey view. And that's going to let me look at the images side by side. And now I'll sit there and I'll tweak this image to kind of represent or be in the same family of colors as my lead photo. And now if I just click on a bunch of these, you'll see that they kind of match the palette. You know, minus a couple, but like even with the red doors, the red taillights, the red logo here, things kind of make sense. The color theory makes sense here as a whole of all the images together. So, and you'll see if you know, let's just go from this image and this image. You'll see if you get an image that really looks off, it kind of looks nasty. It really ruins the mood and the look for the entire image. So in my eyes, like, I want to get this as close as possible. So then, like, let's just say this was a final image right here, right? You could click here and come back in here and say, okay, that was a, you know, the highlights were down a little bit, this was up, clarity, you know, want to bring the exposure back a little bit, we'll warm it up, warmer in the darks, a little shift in the highlight, and then the midtones like this. Now I can come back to library and say, oh, okay, I'm getting there. It looks like I'm still a little too purple. It looks like the yellows are a little too orange compared to the yellow and orange quality in my main photo. And I can come back in here and then, you know, mess with some of this stuff, you know, make this more yellow and your HSL colors and edit things that way, and then bring it back. And you keep playing this game of back and forth until you're dialed in and you got the set looking, you know, consistent and all together. And that is pretty much the way I like to color grade. Here's another example with a little bit later into the afternoon. We shifted over to where the sun was creeping in and got a couple more images, but you could see these two images here. I'm looking at them side by side, then I'm coming back into each one of them and trying to get them close together. Yeah, and lastly, I like to come into library, I come into the grid view, attribute, and I flag all my finals as green, and I can look at them like this, or I can select them all and bring them in and kind of look at them all together and see if there's a standout image that isn't matching the rest of my color grade. And yeah, that's pretty much how I go about keeping color consistent. I think that's more what I wanted this video to be about, is just when you're working on a series of images, just really think about how the colors are playing together from image to image. And yeah, so hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Thanks for checking out the video. And like I said, if there's any specific questions about the apply image thing not working, or anything like that with the color grade, let me know. And hope you guys have a good one.